The speakers for our workshop today are Michelle Tollefson, who is a teen mental health leader and has presented before the Colorado State Legislature on a mental health access bill. She co-authored the Teen Lifestyle Medicine book and designed its accompanying slides. She also co-presented live and online presentations for the National Alliance of Youth Sports Conference. Caitlin has served on mental health boards and was interviewed for Dr. Ken Duckworth's upcoming mental health book. She has appeared in a podcast, local papers, and various news stations on mental health topics. Our other presenter, Dr. Michelle Tollefson, is the Secretary of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and serves on its executive board. She is an obstetrician gynecologist in Denver, Colorado, and a professor in the Health Professions Department at Metropolitan State University of Denver, where she created and oversees the Lifestyle Medicine Program and the Wellness Coaching and Lifestyle Medicine Pathway. She is an author, researcher, international speaker, women's health consultant, breast cancer survivor, and thriver. Now, just a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. Please use the Q&A button for any questions. Once you type your question into the Q&A box, the moderator will be able to see your question. If you're having technical issues, please go back to the NAMICon 2022 virtual site and click on the Help button in the navigation menu at the top of the page. NAMICon sessions include captioning. You can use the closed captioning button in your menu bar. Spanish and American Sign Language interpretations are available for this session. You may select the interpretation button in your menu bar to listen in Spanish, and an ASL interpreter is visible on the screen. But please take a moment at the end of this session to complete your evaluation, answering all questions and clicking the Submit button. Your input will help us ensuring that we are communicating effectively with our audience, as well as helping us develop future programs. Session recordings will be available beginning Wednesday, June 22nd, and will remain available through December 31st of 2022. And with that, please take it away, Dr. Michelle and Caitlin.
Hi, my name is Michelle Tollefson. I'm a senior in high school, so 17 years old, and I'm from Colorado. I'm here with my mom, Dr. Michelle Tollefson, and I'm excited to share some information with you about peer support networks and how they can be used to elevate adolescent or young adult mental health and well-being. Today, I was wanting to help you understand what a peer support network is, especially from a teen's point of view, why peer support networks are so needed, how peer support networks can help, and then what we can do. First, I wanted to start off with my story and share my story so you're able to understand why I'm so passionate about peer support networks. From preschool to 8th grade, I went to a very small school, as is shown on the left. That is a picture of our entire school, preschool through 8th grade. And when I was graduating, there were a little over 300 people at my school, and 18 people in my graduating class. And as I looked to see what high school I was going to go to, I realized that the high school that I chose to go to had a feed-in middle school, where about 95% of the people at that school were from the previous feed-in middle school, and had already made these different connections and formed these peer support networks prior to coming into high school, whereas I did not have those peer support networks. The high school that I currently attend, it has a really bad reputation and to have a really high rate of suicide deaths. For a long period of time, there was about one committed every year, and even one that was committed inside of the building. Throughout the entire school, the students struggled with having poor mental health, and this became a really big issue at my school. As I was transitioning as I was transitioning from my old school to this school, I came with only really having one close connection with one of my friends, and we were both attempting to try to find different places that we could join to see about joining different peer support networks, and um, yeah. We tried to join several different clubs and organizations. I joined the Gender and Sexuality Alliance, Knowledge Bowl, and Sources of Strength, which is pictured up on the screen. And as I was making these connections early freshman year, I just started to find a group or a community that I resonated with. But just as I started to develop these connections, the global pandemic hit. When the pandemic hit, it flipped everything on its head, as most of you know. All high schoolers were forced to go to online schooling, and building and creating these connections was incredibly difficult. Yeah, I have a picture up on the screen of me my first day of sophomore year, logging into my online classes, right on my in my dining room. Yeah, so as COVID went on, it was incredibly hard to find these connections, and many of the connections that I'd made had been lost due to COVID. As I went back to in-person learning, we were split up into two different cohorts. A group A that went to school on odd days, and a group B that went to school on the even days. And this was done to help with social distancing. And as I was attempting to figure out who was in my cohort and who I'd be able to sit with for these days, I realized that my friend that I'd mentioned earlier was not in the same cohort as me, and we would not be going to school the same days ever for as long as we did the cohort learning. So as in the picture, I have a picture of me the day before Halloween in my carrot costume, and I was dressed up in my carrot costume, and I got to school at lunchtime and realized that I did not have any clubs that I was able to go to, and I had to find a place to sit in the socially distanced lunchroom, meaning that I had to sit down next to people that I did not know, and see if I could try to talk to them. And so that is what I did. I sat down in my carrot costume next to some people that now have become some of my really close friends, and yeah. So next, I just wanted to, now that I shared my story, I wanted to share some more general information about a peer support network. My favorite definition for a peer support network is from the Australian Disability Support Organization. This definition reads, a peer support network is where people get together as equals to provide support to each other because of similar experiences or circumstances in their life. And now that I've shared this definition, and kind of a definition that resonates with what I believe a peer support network to be, I want to go into several key factors that are typically seen in a peer support network. The first key factor that I noticed in a peer support network is having a sense of community. This is where there is a two-way relationship going between each of the members in the group. People are able to give into the group and receive from the group. People are able to do each. They're able to share with the group and share their struggles, as well as giving advice and giving support to everyone in the group. Another key factor that peer support networks typically have is that there is typically a shared lived experience. And this allows people to relate with one another and having a shared common experience can create common ground for a peer support network to be fostered, allowing people to allowing teens to be able to develop this place where they can relate with their peers. It also helps. Another key factor for a peer support network is that they work to normalize feelings, and this is where people are able to have this community where they're able to express their emotions and express what they're going through without feeling like they're weird or outcasted for feeling a certain way or going through a certain experience. It provides a place for people to know that what they're going through is normal and that they don't have to feel like they're outcasted for feeling that way. Another key component for a peer support network is that they provide a safe space for people to learn and grow in the group. This means that people are able to share with one another and to help kind of give like life lessons to the people in the group, while they're also able to receive life lessons and be able to learn and grow into their best self, and work to optimize their potential. Another key component for peer support network is that they typically form safety nets. These are usually formed these are usually formed as a place for people to fall back onto when life gets hectic or when life seems unmanageable. They're a group of people that you can fall into when life gets rough, just like a tightrope walker would fall into the net after if they would fall off the tightrope. This also is really prominent in helping to prevent suicide deaths. Having this peer support network where people can go to, having this peer support network that people can go to and provide this safety net allows people to have this place where they're able to see something wrong and see some experience that somebody is going through and realize that they may need more help and be able to connect them with adults, professionals, or different resources to support them, and hopefully decrease the amount of suicide deaths by having this safety net for everyone. Another key factor for a peer support network is that they celebrate differences. This goes beyond just a basic inclusion or tolerating somebody. This goes into celebrating the diversity of the group and the differences between people. It allows people to challenge the stereotype that many may face, and instead of giving into the stereotype, it allows people to grow into truly their best self and to be able to have this best self and be able to celebrate their diversity and differences throughout the peer support network. Lastly, I wanted to mention that everyone deserves a peer supportive network or peer support network. These are not just for people who live with a mental illness. These are for everyone. They're a group of people that you can fall back onto when life gets crazy, and there's not a single person in this world who has a completely perfect life where they don't need anyone or anything like that, and they never have any hectic moments. That's not how life works. So everyone needs and deserves a peer support network, and especially a peer support network that works for them. I like to say that peer support networks are not like ponchos. They're not one size fits all, but everyone needs some form of rain gear to keep them dry when it starts to rain. As I was pulling together these slides, I shot a question out to several of the teens and young adults in my quite a few of the teens and young adults in my community, asking them what words they would relate to a peer support network or a supportive group of friends. And some of the responses that I got was that a peer support network should be supportive, that there should be a focus on community, that they should be positive and insightful, that they should try to be as genuine as possible, as well as being reliable. They should provide a space for people to be heard and nurtured and cared for, while also having a sense of clarity and hopefulness throughout the peer support network. I also wanted to touch on what peer support networks are typically not. Typically, they're not formal counseling, although they can be. They're usually not cliques. They're usually not telling people what they should and should not do or could and could not do. They're not necessarily a group of best friends. They're typically not gossip focused. Many don't have a formal agenda, and they're not only for people who have and live with mental illnesses. But with this being said, I also want to go into saying that that these peer support networks can be made to fit different groups of people. So some are more formal, and some are more fluid and informal. Some are more structured with a certain goal to get to at the end, and some are just free flowing as a way of, kind of in the style of a meet and greet. Some have facilitators, while some do not. Some are more like peer-led. One quote that I really like is from NAMI's blog, and they say that no two peer support groups are the same. Each is as unique as a snowflake or as a fingerprint. Next, I wanted to touch on some different ways that we're able to see a peer support network throughout many teens' lives. One example of this is through different school organizations or clubs. Some examples of this are a science group, a theater group. I've been in Knowledge Bowl, GSA, or Gender and Sexuality Alliance, as well as Sources of Strength. Another place where these peer support networks and supportive networks can form is outside of school in different extracurricular organizations and clubs. Some examples of this would be a outside of school theater group, a rock hounding group, robotics club, or my favorite is circus classes. These can also form, these strong connections can also form through sports. This can be through competitive ball sports, to other things such as track teams or swim teams, as well as dance. These can be held in the school or in the community. They're typically a group of people where they're able to form and foster these peer support networks. Another place where we can typically see these peer support networks form is through friend groups. Not all friend groups are positive peer support networks, but we can hope and try to do as much as possible to allow these friend groups to become and be positive peer support networks. These friend groups are typically can be found in both in school as well as outside of school, and they can typically form a very intimate group of people to form this peer support network with. Another place where we are able to see a peer support network form is through different community centers. This can be through things such as the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, public library, recreation centers. There's one in our community at our public library called the Teen Hangout, which provides a space for teens across the city to get together and to build this peer support network. Another place that we're able to see these peer support networks form, especially after COVID, is through different online communities. This is many ways that we've seen this in the past are through different social media platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, as well as different video chatting groups such as Discord or different Zoom groups. These have become a very prominent form of connecting with people since the pandemic. Another way that we're able to see these peer support networks is through a mental health professional supervised peer support network. These are typically more formal support networks with a designated leader and a designated goal to get to at the end for a specific group of people. Some high schools and colleges have these, whereas there's many as well outside of school. Next, I wanted to touch on why peer support networks are so needed. And to do this, I wanted to share some really sobering statistics with you. In the last year, 1 in every 3 high school students have experienced poor mental health during the pandemic. That's a third of all high schoolers who have experienced poor mental health in just 1 year. And this rate is incredibly high. Another statistic that is incredibly upsetting is when you consider the rates of suicide as it deals with teens. In the last year, 20% of teens have seriously considered suicide and 9% have attempted. To put a little bit of a visual to this, if you have a group of just 10 teens in one room together, there's a good chance that 2 of those teens have seriously considered taking their own lives, and 9% have attempted to take their life. And these statistics are incredibly high and incredibly scary to think about. Girls as well have reported faring worse than men and have been found to be twice as likely to report poor mental health. More than 1 in 4 girls have reported that they had seriously contemplated attempting suicide throughout the pandemic. And these are incredibly high statistics that should not be this high. Another place that we're able to see these statistics come out is seeing how throughout the years these statistics have changed. One of these statistics is how is the percentage of teens who have reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless. In 2009, when released a survey, this figure was at about 26%. 26% of all teens had reported feeling persistently sad or hopeless, and this figure is already incredibly high. And in just 10 years, from 2009 to 2019, this percentage rose from 26% to 37%. And then in just 2 years later, from 2019 to 2021, this figure rose to 44% of all teens have reported feeling persistently sad and hopeless. This is almost half of all teens who have reported feeling this way, and these statistics are incredibly upsetting. Physicians are recognizing that this is a huge issue as well. American Academy of Pediatrics declared a national emergency in child and adolescent mental health, saying that its members were quote, caring for young people with soaring rates of depression, anxiety, trauma, loneliness, and suicidality that will have lasting impacts on them, their families, and their communities. American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry President Gabrielle Carlson said that we cannot sit idly by. This is a national emergency, and the time for swift and deliberate action is now. And I also wanted to cover that vulnerable populations are incredibly at risk for being a victim of all these different statistics. These different populations are populations such as the LGBTQ plus community, ethnic minorities, women, the socioeconomically disadvantaged, those that have a history of abuse, those who live with mental illness, as well as those who do not have a peer support network. So this is why having a peer support network will have a tremendous impact in reducing these statistics and allowing people to get out of this, at least allow people to get out of this part of being more vulnerable to these statistics. So now my mom is going to talk about how peer support networks can help from a physician's point of view.
Thank you, Caitlin. So I'm Dr. Michelle Tollefson, and as Caitlin mentioned, I want to share with you some information about how peer support networks can help. So Caitlin was able to share some really sobering statistics, and I want to come at this from that, looking to see what we can do to make a difference, because peer support networks can play a large role in helping to address the mental health crisis that we have going on right now with our teens and young adults. So a quote: as part of normal growth, adolescents develop independence from parents and form strong peer attachments as they develop autonomy. And this is what we want. When our kids are younger, they're coming to us as parents with their issues, with their problems. But as they go through that normal developmental process, they start to connect more and more with their peers. And so their peers are often their ones who they're turning to for advice and who are hearing what's going wrong in their life and good. So this is normal. We want this to happen, but with this comes the importance of helping these teens create and then foster thriving peer support networks so that they have a group of their peers to turn to who can provide support in a way that helps to elevate and support mental health and well-being. So it's not that parents and teachers and administrators can't be part of the solution. We all need to be part of the solution, but we have to look at how we can help to create and sustain these peer support networks in order to really address the mental health crisis. So COVID-19, of course, created major life disruption and stressors for all of us, but it was even more detrimental, it seems, to adolescent and teen mental health. This is from the CDC Acting Principal Deputy Director, Deborah Howery, and she comments on that COVID-19, those stressors have the potential to further erode students' mental health and well-being. But I think it's so exciting to also know that she states, quote, "Our research shows that surrounding youth with the proper support can reverse these trends and help our youth now and into the future." So we have to act now. The research is showing us that giving these teens and adolescents the proper support, a nurturing peer support network, not only will just stabilize their mental health, but it can help us to reverse some of these really disturbing trends that Caitlin showed. So this just highlights why we need to be really focusing on these peer support networks. Now, Caitlin shared some data from just in the last year and a half. This data goes back to 2019, but it still is important for us to be able to look at this. This is from the CDC. So on the left side, it talks about the rates of contemplation of suicide, and these were lower. The statistics that Caitlin shared are actually higher because they're more recent data, taking COVID into account as well. But when you look at that middle column, the purple column, we see that teens who feel close to people at school were far less likely to, so first of all, they're far less likely to have attempted suicide or thought about attempting suicide. So that's some of our statistics that we're looking at right now. But also we see that adults, when they look at research from over time and they look at adults, the adults who experience strong connections in youth and adolescence were 48 to 66% less likely to have mental health issues as an adult, to experience violence, to engage in risky sexual behavior, and to use addictive substances. So putting in those positive peer support networks or getting students connected with resources and people who care about them at school can play a huge difference in their life. And on the right side too, I know we're talking a lot about peer support networks, but we all have a role to play. Whether you are a teacher, an administrator, whether you're an adolescent, we all have a role to play in addressing this mental health crisis. And of course, there's many different ways that we can come at addressing it. I think we need to use all of our avenues, but peer support networks can play a really large role in addressing this. And we can all help to support with creating those peer support networks or to keep them thriving once they're going. So, so youth, this is just data in from the last year or so, but youth who felt connected to adults and peers at school, so they have those strong connections. During the pandemic, less than half of our students, so 47% of our students, less than half, reported feeling close to people at school. And we know that that connection to the adults and peers at school, the people who do, or the youth who do have that support, are less likely to report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. They are less likely to seriously considering attempting suicide, and they're less likely to have attempted suicide. So when you think about what you can do, I mean, those statistics around suicide and mental illness are really, really, really tough to think about. But when you look at about half of our teens not feeling close to people at school, and the negative impact that can have, it gives us this huge opportunity to say, what can we do through peer support networks to make a significant difference? So now I've hopefully helped to connect the sobering state that we're in with our adolescent and teen mental health with how peer support networks can help to address that problem. Now we want to go into some more practical advice about how you can help to create and sustain thriving peer support networks. And as we discuss this, I'd like for you to think about, most likely you may have ideas already to this point about how you might want to create a peer support network, or how you may want to take, maybe it's already a club at school, but you want to look at how you can make that into more of a thriving peer support network. So as we go through these next slides, I'd like for you to think about what you can do in your own sphere of influence in order to help to create or to sustain thriving peer support networks, because we all want to be part of the solution. So I looked at a lot of different toolkits when Caitlin and I were preparing this talk, but the best toolkit that I could find was this Developing Peer Support in the Community toolkit from Side by Side Research Consortium. And this is a free toolkit that you can just download. So if you search for this on the internet, you can download this and get access to this toolkit. There are many others. Some are more detailed, some are simpler, but this one is free, it's clear and practical. And the information that Caitlin and I share in the next several slides will be based upon the guidelines and structure laid forth in this toolkit. So I encourage you to get it and check it out. Also, I think when we're thinking about creating and sustaining thriving peer support networks, I encourage you to think about how you can use what is already happening in your community, in your state, or even globally. This was made, this is from London, so you can even think globally. But how can you reach out and find who's already doing what you're trying to do, or who's doing something kind of similar? Maybe you're trying to create a group for teens who struggle with anxiety in your school, or you're trying to create a thriving peer support network with a theater group. Maybe there are others, most likely there are others who are already doing similar things. And what I found is that among people who lead and support peer support networks, they are usually eager to share what they've learned with others. So I encourage you to reach out to them, email them, ask to schedule a Zoom meeting with them if they're not local, and ask them about what's worked well for them, what struggles they've had, and how they've overcome those. Because I think the people who are working on these peer support networks are often some of the most genuine people that you'll find, and people who really want to help to spread what they're doing with others in need. So this is from the toolkit, and this is the pyramid that Caitlin will go into in further depth with each of these 6 areas. But the first, when we're thinking of creating or sustaining a peer support network, especially creating one, we need to think about having these, the members have an experience in common, having a place where they can feel safe, and giving them some type of choice and control within the group. If we lay that foundation, we're able to jump to that next layer of the pyramid, where you're hopefully having meaningful two-way interactions between the members, and they're experiencing deep and meaningful human connection. And then if we have both of these layers of the pyramid, we hope that we're able to get to that top layer of the pyramid within our peer support networks, which is where the members feel free to be oneself. And this is from that toolkit, but I would say even beyond just freedom to be oneself, I would say that also if we can get to that top of the pyramid, hopefully we're hoping to support mental health and well-being in our teens and adolescents, and not even just support it, but hopefully helping to elevate that their mental health. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Caitlin, who's going to give some more information about these various steps within the pyramid.
Yeah. So I'm going to go more into depth on each of the different segments of this pyramid. So the first one, to build this foundation of this pyramid, it's incredibly important for a peer support network to have different common experiences to tie a group together, kind of like a string or like a ribbon, being able to kind of unite the group and making it easier to talk and empathize with one another in the group. It's also another important part for the foundation of a peer support network is by creating a safe space for the people in it. It's important to have guidelines for creating a safe space physically, as well as emotionally and mentally safe spaces. This is usually done by setting different ground rules and having set like confidentiality and respect throughout the group. And there's typically a rule knowing where whatever is shared in the group usually stays in the group. So just providing that emotionally and mentally safe space for people to feel comfortable sharing in that environment. Another important factor for these peer support networks is by being able to have a sense of choice and control in the group for each of the members. This allows the people in the group to have a sense of power and feeling like they're able to contribute and be heard throughout the group. It provides a way for people to be able to have a sense of choice in how much they participate or when they participate, and creates a more respectful and a more nurturing group. Moving up to the next level, to form this way to the peak to support mental health is by having the peer support networks have two-way interactions between the members. It allows people to have this interaction with people where there's not always one person who is giving to the group. There's and not one person who is always receiving from the group. It's a two-way street where people are able to both give and receive support, where people are able to give knowledge as well as gain knowledge. It allows people to build this type of trust between the two and allows people to feel valued in what they say. Another part of a peer support network that makes these as positive as they can be is by having a form of human connection. This human connection is important to make sure that a peer support network is authentic and genuine. Making sure that's what having a place for things to be shared, no matter how difficult the emotion is, making it a safe space and a place where people can genuinely and authentically express themselves. It makes it so it's not a fake group where people are always happy all the time, 24/7. It's a place where people can celebrate with each other, but also have time to have this authenticity in the network. This all leads up to having a freedom to be oneself throughout the group. So this creates a place where people are able to flourish, and as well as creating a place for people to have better mental health, and to create this place where people are able to share with one another of the people in the group and have this positive mental health space for people to get the help that they need, and to hopefully, if all of these are achieved, to have the best support as possible for their mental and emotional health. According to the toolkit, these are some of the key decisions that you need to ask when creating a thriving network. One of the first key decisions to make is what focus will there be for this peer support network. It helps to understand what impact you're trying to achieve and what goal you're looking towards. This could be something as simple as well-being or having a positive space for the group, or it could be a very specific finish line goal. And both can be helpful in their own ways. Another important decision to make is how will it be facilitated and coordinated. This goes more into like the different logistics of forming this peer support network. Where will it be held? What time will it be held? How will you get this information out to the different members? And even what are the different snacks that are going to be at this meeting? And it allows a peer support network to have a more straightforward and productive meeting. It's also important to determine what type of leadership and decision making is best in these peer support networks. Will this peer support network be led by a group of peers, or will it be led by an individual person, an individual peer, or will it be led by a mental health professional or a different adult that oversees it? And then how will decisions be made? Typically, it's best to make sure that everyone is able to get a voice in determining how the decision is made and in determining what the decision will be. That allows everyone to feel as if they have a voice in this peer support network. Another important decision to cover is what membership type will there be? How will people be invited to the group? Who is it for? How big is it going to be? How long will it last? And then is it going to be open where people are able to join in and have it be a very fluid and moving network? Or will it be more closed and have people join just at the beginning and form a more intimate group? One of the last key decisions to make is determining what organizational support will be needed. What different organizations or businesses you need to talk to get the resources or the place for this peer support network to meet. You need to talk to different nonprofit organizations, a school, community, just to determine what different resources are needed. Another important thing to mention is to talk about the different ongoing peer support networks. There are several things to remember. One is that change is always going to be constant. There will not be a time where things will be the exact same every single time. There will always be a change in a peer support network. It's also important to be able to get feedback on what the group's doing, keep track of your progress that you're making, share responsibility for the group, sharing different challenges and achievements that may be made, as well as keeping a realistic perspective of what can be accomplished. Next, I'm going to go into some different peer support network examples. And if you wanted to find any more information on anything that was mentioned earlier, you can refer to the awesome toolkit that was mentioned earlier. So one organization that I'm a part of is called Young Invincibles. It's a national organization. It's a national organization that works to create change in our communities. Some of the ways that I participated in this group have been through testifying for a mental health equity bill, which was passed bipartisanly or unanimously in both the House and Senate, as well as like lobbying for different health-related bills and mental health-related bills. And it provides a sense of purpose, I guess, it's provided a sense of purpose to my life. And the fact that it is very change-focused has created a very supportive peer support network for me. And if there's anything like this in your community, I would encourage you to join, as they are very helpful. Another organization that I am a part of and have been part of the leadership team since I've been a part of the leadership team since second semester of freshman year is called Sources of Strength. This is a national organization that has different high school chapters, and they work to use different what they call strengths to form this safety net for teens, especially in schools. And this had actually arisen out of the mental health crisis that my school was going through, and has helped tremendously. Some of the things that we have done are different themed dinners during COVID, as I showed earlier, to help keep people connected, as well as writing a personalized compliment for every single person at the school for a day called PS I Love You Day. And another form of peer support network that I'm in is called the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. This is a great organization for people who this applies to be able to form a sense of community and be able to have people to relate to in this. And as you can see on the chart provided, the amount of gender and sexuality alliances have been increasing throughout almost every single state across the nation, which is incredibly impactful. And if you realize that there might be a need for a gender and sexuality alliance or sources of strength at your local high school, or anyone that might want to join it, I would strongly recommend that you either help start one of these or encourage people in your life to join these if it would help them. Just to kind of wrap up my story, things are getting better. I found my peer support network, and as is in the photo, I still remained really close with my friend, but I also found my friend from I mentioned much earlier, and I also found a group of different people just from sitting down on the day before Halloween with my carrot costume. And I've been able to have this group of amazing friends that have supported me, and we each support each other throughout life and throughout high school.
Can you scoot forward?
Just to go over Colorado's future. Colorado has had a reputation for not financially prioritizing mental health services and providers. But because of this, there are many different initiatives that are working to make this better, that are working to fight against this. Some different organizations that I'm part of is PCMH, or Partners for Children's Mental Health, through a children's hospital, as well as Sources of Strength and Young Invincibles, that work to fight for better mental health throughout the state. And I would encourage anyone who is interested by this to join the fight for mental health, as there's a lot of different things going on in this field right now. I'd encourage you to check with your state or even on the national level about what's going on and how you can help fight for mental health equity and mental health, and for these statistics I mentioned earlier to hopefully be diminished. And lastly, I want to wrap up with just talking about how I see myself going as a 17-year-old. I am a 17-year-old who is a soon-to-be senior in high school. I have started looking towards different things in the future. I was accepted to be a peer support counselor this upcoming year, or a PSC, to help foster these peer support networks in my own school. And during college and after graduating college, I hope to stay involved in different politics with advocacy and lobbying for different mental health related bills and other things in general, as well as possibly going into psychiatry. But it's not just, this is not just about my future, but this is about all of our futures and the nation as a whole. And to do this, we need to be able to work together to use peer support networks to elevate mental health and adolescent mental health and well-being. Yeah. And so now my mom and I are free to take any questions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Caitlin and Michelle. We do have a few questions. So some of the questions have been answered by our presenters throughout, but I have a great question here, which is, how do you encourage youth to attend peer support groups if they don't see a need for it, are afraid to attend because of stigma, etc.?
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the a really big concern, I guess, with creating peer support networks. And one of the biggest things to look at when you're creating a peer support network is to be able to go over, I guess, to make sure that people have a group that they fit in with and that they feel really connected to. If somebody is not feeling like they're connected to a group that they're in, they're going to have a much harder time, I guess, participating in that group. And that's just, I guess, kind of how humans are, is just if they feel connected with the group, they'll want to be more involved. But being able to have that first step of like encouragement and kind of making that first step into the group is really helpful. Yeah.
I think just real quickly too, I think that's why it's so important that we have a variety of different peer support networks, because it's not a one size fits all. Somebody may be into a group where they focus more on gaming, or somebody that focuses more on sports. So I think we just need to look for all different ways where we can be increasing our peer support networks within our schools, within our communities, because we need our teens connected, and we know that the ones that work for somebody may not work for somebody else. Great question.
And this next question speaks to that a little bit as well. It mentions that a lot of organizations have an age requirement for membership or partnership. Are there any organizations that you know of that are teen friendly? And how can someone find those organizations near them?
Yeah, I would say that there's many, especially informal peer support networks. Many, I'd say probably like 99% of informal peer support networks are don't have an age requirement and are intended for kind of the group that they fit with, so like a friend group or sports or the clubs or stuff like that. But yeah,
do you want to mention Sources of Strength or Young Invincibles too?
Yeah, so some of the different organizations that I'm involved with, Young Invincibles is one of the big ones that I'm involved with, and that has an age requirement of, I think it's like 16, I think, to 34, I think, or something around that age group. But many do have kind of like age groups, kind of like show the different amounts of people or different kind of like target age group to be in. But yeah, finding those groups of people that fit best with you is really important.
Yeah, and then Sources of Strength also it's a national organization where teens can join, or different schools can help to set up. My understanding, they can help to set up these Sources of Strength organizations within their school. So I think that's another amazing opportunity and resource that I've heard about through Caitlin.
Yeah.
And you mentioned getting the schools involved. There's a question about how you get the schools to buy into allowing peer support groups. They mentioned that we've faced challenges that they do not feel students are ready to take on helping other students with mental health issues.
Yeah, so I would say that there's many that I'd say a big step for people to take is many peer support networks form in really informal ways. So one of the things I mentioned was a friend group can be a peer support network as long as they are working to help mentally support the people inside the group. So they can be really, because informal, or even just like a club or just like a group of people But having that access to information on this is how we can make sure that this group is mentally healthy and is able to work through different things and different emotions in a supportive way is probably the best thing. So putting out information about how a peer support network should run and kind of getting out that information. It doesn't have to be a formal group of people. It doesn't have to be like formal counseling. It can just be providing information to make sure that the connections that have already been formed in the group are able to be more supportive and to become a peer support network rather than creating an entire new one.
Also, jumping off of that too, is I think that that's why we need to advocate for mental health access and presence within our school systems. I think this is, if there was ever a time to make a case for the need for this, it's sharing those statistics and helping people realize how important it is to have mental health experts or to have a mental health presence within our school system. And then also, like, as a physician, I know it's important to have training. And Caitlin, in the Sources of Strength, she's done different training to be their president. She works with a teacher who's connected with that organization, and then to be a peer support counselor next year, she'll go to training as well. So I think that's important too. You don't just want to take teens and say, go out there and lead a group. But I think sharing some of these statistics with a school board or with the school administration, advocating for a larger mental health presence, counselors or whatever we can do to have access in the schools, and then also looking for teachers who are excited to get involved. A teacher or maybe a parent wants to help run an organization, and then going through organizations that do have some training, especially for teens who want to be these peer leaders. Because I mean, the data shows too, they don't want to hear from mom and dad anymore. Once they're this age, they want to, they're much more connected to their peers, and will often take advice from them more so than mom and dad. So training some of our leaders. Of course, I think Caitlin's amazing, but I know there are other amazing teens out there as well who can be peer support leaders. And I believe at her school too, the teachers help identify, or there's like an application process for if you want to be a peer support counselor, and then there's a process, and then those students are selected and trained.
Yeah.
And there's a question here. Do you have any suggestions on protecting teens' online and social media sources that are safe?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the different things with social media, with the age of the internet, there's a lot of things that can be unsafe, and that's definitely a risk that's taken. I typically only form groups with over like online communities with people that I already know, and I'm able to kind of form with that people that I've already known in person first, which helps to eliminate some of the online dangers. But I definitely know that that's an issue, and it's really important just to take kind of basic online protection. So like not usually meeting up with people in person that you've met online unless you know them really well. But yeah, usually it's best to take like some of those good online precautionary tips.
Yeah, and then also I think this is an area where I think that parents should be involved in helping to teach their teens about what's safe and what isn't. And I think that we can use our mental health experts within our school systems. We can use our counselors. We can use our teachers to help get the word out to our students about what's there. And then also we can use our peer support leaders, those teens, to help to spread that message as well. But it's definitely a problem. I don't have the solution, but I know that's an important point.
Yeah, and thank you so much for all the different questions.
And we do have more questions, but it looks like we're running out of time. So I want to thank you again, Caitlin and Michelle. Once again, if those of you who are attending could please take a moment to complete your evaluation, which will pop up at the end of the session. Your input helps us in ensuring that we're communicating effectively with our audience, and also helps us to develop future programs. Thank you for attending this workshop, everyone.